responsive. I do make the name tags if you sign up for one. This meeting is from noon to 1. We have the space until 2. You may stay after the meeting or join an action committee to meet after this meeting. Be sure to check our information table. I encourage you to go to our bar, belly up to our bar, non-alcoholic. It has all kinds of information. It has all kinds of, my brother collects political jokes. He likes cutting them out. We have all kinds of other stuff over there. Please notice that I put out the voting information for May 8th. It's at your table, and we have more copies at the bar. Please step up to our bar if you need to have that voting information. Okay. David Hughes, want to wave, David? He's our Warder Park person. If you want to say Warder Park, and we all do, you should know about you should know David and have him take you for a walk there sometime. It's a really beautiful piece of Springfield Township that they really need to preserve. And of course they want to industrialize it or whatever. Ruin all this perfectly beautiful piece of nature. Okay, let's see. Sign up for name button, but if you sign up for a name button, please make your name legible. I have somebody back there signed up and made an absolutely illegible last name, and I started to put the illegible last name. Sid is probably coming, but he's not here yet. His mother's here. Let's see. We have all kinds of people who are kind of slip in at the last minute, so we will make any introductions. Okay, and at this point, what I'm going to do, announcements for today, yes. Yes.
I got a bike.
I have a petition for the initiative to change level 4 and 5 felonies to misdemeanors for simple drug possession, so that the money can be used for rehabilitation instead of imprisonment. And I distributed that last week for Hamilton County. I have, if anybody didn't sign it for Hamilton County, I have it here. And I also have one for Warren County now. If anybody from Warren County wants to sign it, just let me know.
We have petitions, make sure. Peter.
Yeah, I met one of the judge candidates at the Sherrod Brown thing, and she sent me a list of the Democratic endorsed judge candidates. I put it on the bar, but I will add it as an appendix to the newsletter.
Do that.
What really strikes me is just how important these judgeships are and how constantly they're ignored. Last night we heard Terry Nestor speaking. He was saying, in a county where Hillary won by a whole lot, all the judges lost because people don't even bother to vote for them. So I think it's really important that we try to focus on knowing who our good judges are, because the system has been controlled for years and years by Republicans who are not nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if you noticed that on our list of speakers, we have some people towards the May 8th primary who are talking about how important those judgeships are. Any other announcements before I go through my list?
I'll yell one out.
Okay, Bonnie from the back.
Sherrod Brown's office called me yesterday. Apparently they're
Sheriff Brown's office, just a minute, right, here we go.
They're looking for rooms for campaign workers. So if anybody has you don't get paid, but I've done it on the presidential elections. They're looking for places.
Space?
Places where campaign workers can sleep. And believe me, that's about all they do. You don't see them any other time. But it's a rewarding experience. So, and I'm sure if you call Sherrod Brown's local office, they'll hook you up. I don't have the woman's number with me right now. She called me yesterday.
Good for you. Glad you've done that in the past, and let's hope some people here might be.
That's all. And I have hats.
Yeah, Bonnie has hats.
Beautiful hats.
Pussy hats.
Like what, $10?
Yes.
Good for that. Any other announcements?
If anybody's interested in addiction, there's going to be a good program Thursday night in Blue Ash Jewish Family Service. I put some flyers back there. Is anybody going to tell us about the rally Saturday at West End? Details? About the soccer stadium? Katie, you going to tell us?
Lana, do you know anything about that?
Saturday, there's a rally down in the West End. It's very close to the intersection of Lynn Street and Ezra Charles Drive. Lincoln Rec Center. It's going to be listening to the people of the West End, as well as the people that are opponents of FC Cincinnati going in and taking Sturgill Stadium. There were some interesting developments last night. FC Cincinnati blinked. They finally said, well, I guess maybe we ought to pay some money in property taxes, and they offered a pittance of $100,000 a year when they should be paying $3.5 million a year. And so the school board has tabled the whole thing, rejected their offer, which I'm very happy. But the thing through this whole process is, I don't know if you saw this, they're supposed to have a community partnership agreement. Well, yesterday, FC Cincinnati took a snapshot of it, gave it to the press, and gave it to the city of Cincinnati. And the community partnership agreement is supposed to be with the people from the West End. And the people from the West End are being ignored. They're being ignored, and that's what this rally is about on Saturday. People of the West End need to be heard, and they're not being heard. And Jeff Birding said early on, the West End doesn't want us, we won't go there. Guess what? That's where Lindner and his investors are going to make the most amount of money. It's not Oakley. It is not Newport. They want West End because that's where they're going to make the most amount of money.
There you go.
My running view is that Jeff Birding report of a good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Bennett.
Thank you. I just wanted to share some,
Hold it, folks. Let's listen to Bennett.
just wanted to share some reading that I did. The Texas had a primary recently. Yeah, Texas, believe it or not. There was an interesting arrangement they had. They let the Democratic voters vote on Democratic policy issues. They weren't voting on laws, but voting on policy issues. And they had about 12 of them. 3 of them I found very interesting because they all passed by 90-something percent, 93, 95%. 2 of them had to do with using the Federal Reserve to fund a couple of things. One is to fund infrastructure in the United States. Federal Reserve, my understanding, is the biggest credit-producing entity in the world, and we don't have to borrow money from other folks. We can use the Federal Reserve to do credit stimulus here. They talked about union jobs, $5 trillion, fix the whole country, airports, roads, bridges, all that, trains. That was one issue, 93%. One was to do Medicare for everybody. The other one was to refinance student loan, of which I hear there is about $1 trillion from the Federal Reserve at extremely low interest rates. So I think those are 3 issues that 90-something% of the Democrats in Texas, and about 1 million folks voted, I hear, in the Democratic primary. I think those are issues we need to spread around to other Democrats in the country, because I think they're like mass traction economic issues that combine the identity groups that we've broken up into. Identity groups, I think, get in the way of our combining as the 99%. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bennett. Other announcements before I go into my list. Oh, here comes Sid and Barb. Now, Sid and Barb loaned us the ducks last week for AFTAB. Remember that? AFTAB. Yes. And we sold ducks and actually raised some money for AFTAB that I have not been able to give to him yet because, although I've tried to donate online, it didn't work. So I have actually tried to email him. I want to get him his money, and I'm going to give him some ducks myself. Okay, so welcome Deb and Sid. Okay, some announcements from me. You see the voting that's going to happen on May 8th and all of the dates. I want you to know that it's not just that one primary date, that you can vote any time at the Board of Elections on the days that they tell you when it starts. And the day that it starts is the day after voting registration ends. So if you know people who haven't voted yet, please, or haven't registered to vote, please get them registered. We have registration forms back there, but it has to be in the day before the early voting starts. I have announcements about meetings for sewer backups for the Hamilton County commissioners. And they're having meetings on the March 15th and March 26th. The one on March 26th is particularly big. It's going to be with the at the Mount Auburn Presbyterian Church, and it's with the League of Women Voters, and it should be, they're talking about sewer backups, they're talking about rate structure, they're talking about infrastructure construction, and the governance of the MSD. And if you have concerns about any of those, you need to be at those meetings. And I'll get this information to Peter. The Women's Club is bringing Martha Raddatz to Cincinnati. Everybody know who Martha Raddatz is? She's the ABC commentator on the Middle East. And she is wonderful. And what in the world? She's talking about global hotspots and U.S. foreign policy. And that's going to be on, let me look, April 16th. And the Legal Women Voters would like you to buy the tickets through them, but just know that it's going to be at Memorial Hall, and it should be really good. Tomorrow.
You can get tickets at Memorial Hall online or at Women's City Club online.
Yeah. Legal Women Voters like them, wants them to. Okay, let's see. Wyoming schools won again on the Youth at the Booth channel. Everybody know about Youth at the Booth? That's for youngsters or any adults who want to work at the polls. It's $181 for one day's work, but it's a long, long day. It's from 6 a.m. to around 8:45 p.m. and there's a 4-hour training and there's a set up the evening before. It's much easier for adults who have car transports to get to the places. You might have to, I shouldn't tell you this, you might have to claim to be a Republican in some places because there are some areas where there are only Democrats. And if you claim to be a Republican, you can be honest and just say, you know, I'm a Republican today.
I'm honest and lying.
Yes, but sometimes they have a harder time getting some people to sign up for the
Call yourself a Lincoln Republican.
Lincoln Republican.
Would you like to salvage the Republican?
I like the announcements about school walkouts tomorrow. Does everybody know that tomorrow is the 1 month anniversary of the shooting in Florida? And schools across the country are staging walkouts, and I'm going to ask you to remember the 17 dead at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning when students across the nation are going to be walking out and just having a moment of silence or whatever, just something in your heart tomorrow. I thought it was interesting that the local parent paper actually said about what the different school systems were going to do this. Boone County Schools, they were very interesting. Students have not alerted Boone County Schools administration to any walkout plans. They are actually leaving it up to the kids, folks. Can you imagine? I mean, that they're not advising or educating these people how to make this work within what the adults want. But tomorrow at 10 o'clock, they're doing 17 minutes outside, and some schools are going to make trouble for the kids who go out.
You know anything about what schools are doing reprisals?
About the Winton schools? Mason schools.
What was the question?
Mason schools.
What schools are doing reprisals against the students for doing the walkout?
Here's this.
We should have been writing to those schools and insisting that they not do that.
Okay, survey, winner Martha Raddatz. Okay, that brings us to Carole Womeldorf. There she goes. And our program for today is about the Poor People's Campaign. Now, Carole is here. She's from Maryland originally. She taught engineering at Ohio University, but she now has her own company, and she does engineering education consulting, which I'm happy to have her here because she can educate us about some of this engineering stuff. Okay, so for today, on Poor People's Campaign, we have Carole Womeldorf. Thank you for coming.
Hi. Let's see, so working on not hitting the wrong button like I just did, but I think we'll be fine in just a second here.
Talk more closely to the microphone.
Okay, let's see, hi, thank you for the reminder. Okay. Oh, it fell asleep maybe. Or it didn't like the fact that it didn't have a message, that's probably why it fell asleep. Is that what it was? All right, okay, great. Thank you so much, Alberta. I appreciate the introduction. So my name is Carole Womeldorf. So I'm going to do an introduction, and I'm going to see if I can get the video to work, because I'm doing it through my phone, which I'm not used to doing. And then I'll give you a little bit of overview about the Poor People's Campaign, both at the national level and at the state of Ohio level. And then I'm going to talk about some of the objectives of the Poor People's Campaign, and talk about the four enmeshed evils of poverty, systemic racism, ecological devastation, and the war economy. And then if we kind of are interested, we may break out into groups at closing, but mostly I'll just focus on questions and sort of, if maybe, I guess you guys are going to have action teams afterwards. I can offer a table and answer more questions in detail at that, if you guys can go a little further. All right. So my name is Carole Womeldorf. I'm trained as a mechanical engineer. I taught engineering for 7 years at Ohio University. I'm working with Mary Aguilera, who is on the Ohio Coordinating Council for the Poor People's Campaign. The council is mostly in Columbus, but Mary and I are working here in Cincinnati. And I've been giving these talks. This is like the third or fourth version of it I've been giving. And my email is my personal email, c1womeldorf@gmail.com. And I'll give you some more links to the Poor People's Campaign Facebook page, which is Ohio Poor People's Campaign. But there's also a local kind of coordinating group here, which is found on Facebook under Cincinnati Justice Tribe Network. So let's see if I can get this to work. Cross fingers. Ooh, audio. How about that? Would I have the audio?
Sometimes if they hold the mic to the back, it just...
Yeah.
Great idea. Okay, hold on. There. There.
You want audio?
They are living in tragic conditions because of the terrible economic injustices that keep them locked in.
We have to deal with our war economy, the systemic racism, systemic poverty, and ecological devastation. And finally, we have to deal with moral narrative.
We are traveling around this country building this Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. What we want to do now is hear a little bit from the local community who are a part of this campaign.
I've spent 5 or so more years homeless. Living on minimum wage has caused me to have to figure out on a daily basis how to afford basic necessities.
While the U.S. sends trillions abroad, my friends, family, and fellow veterans suffer the economic consequences of the war economy.
I have 2 children, and I enjoy raising them while acknowledging that being poor is a struggle of human rights.
But when I lost my housing, health care, and income all at the same time, I was terrified, panicked.
I want to stand here and proclaim the power and dignity of the greatest in my life.
I can't afford to pay a cab.
It was one thing to know that you didn't have water and you couldn't afford your water.
it's a whole nother to find out that they shut off your entire community and none of you matter. And in the aftermath of climate change disasters, poor people and people of color are the ones to lose their homes.
Who can't survive this 17.5?
No parent should in America should have to bury their children for a lack of medical intervention.
Being poor is not a sin. Poverty is a sin. Being homeless is not a sin. Homelessness is a sin.
And we are here, and it's time for us to be the remnant that can transform the nation.
We are calling for a season of moral resistance, a season of organizing, a season of nonviolent, massive civil disobedience.
There will be movement that will break through the con and cut through the lies and bring people together to save the heart and the soul of this democracy and this world.
Well, I have been following informally Reverend Barber for years, and I don't know if you all are as moved and as motivated by him as I am, but he speaks deep, profound, and powerful truths about our society and about our power, that if we mobilize together, we can make an enormous difference. And when I heard young people in our town talking with anger and barely covered hatred about the Richard Spencer presence coming here, and I said, I understand why they're angry, but we've got to give them another choice. We have to give them some leadership that gives them a choice that can have an actual impact on the big problems that are making somebody like Richard Spencer empowered and are taking away so much of the hope that so many of these young people should have. And I went and I found Reverend Barber because he was the only person I knew who spoke with the power and the nonviolence and the love that I wanted to be brought forward. And I found out in that process that the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, was beginning. It was just kind of, it'd been sort of in the background for maybe 6 months, a year, but it was starting to really mobilize externally, and I said, this is something I want to be part of. And that's part of my introduction too, because it's why I care about it, it's why I'm spending my time here with you, because I know that you all are working toward a better place, and we work together, so we'll get there. Let's see.
Is he going to be coming to Cincinnati sometime?
I sure hope so. I expect most certainly he will be coming to Columbus. He's been in Columbus in 2016, and I would be shocked if he wasn't here again in the next year.
I think he was here the end of 15. I think he was, Reverend Barber did come to Cincinnati. We brought him with the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers.
Okay, he also spoke at American Federation of Teachers.
That's right.
There we go. Okay, so as you've noticed on the video, Dr. Reverend William Barber is one of the national co-leaders of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. His organization, Repairers of the Breach, has been about, I'm not sure when that started, but back in 2006 or 8, he was president of the NAACP in North Carolina and led the Moral Mondays movement, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. Dr. Reverend Liz Theo Harris is in New York City with Kairos, Center for Religious Rights and Social Justice, and she and he together are the co-leads of the Poor People's Campaign. The organization, as a national call, national leadership, is working in the 25 most immoral, I'll put that in quotes, immoral states. These states are states where the minimum wage is not a livable wage, where Medicaid did not get expanded when the federal government offered that with the Affordable Health Care Act, the Obamacare. In states where voters' rights have been suppressed and restrictions are being added and more to reduce the number of people. So local group, the Unitarian Universalist Justice Ohio is a statewide organization. I coordinate with them, I am a UU also, looking at justice across the state of Ohio. They are all in with the Poor People's Campaign. I believe the Episcopalians have also signed up with it. Picture the Homeless in New York City, Michigan welfare rates, organizations all across the country in at least these 25, I think it's now 35 states that are focused. These are sort of the worst offenders of the rights of the human rights. So if you don't know, who in here doesn't really know who William Barber is? Okay, great. Okay, good. Let me give you a little background. Like I said, 2006, he became president of the NAACP in North Carolina. He said, we're not doing board meetings, we're taking this to the streets. And by 2013, he created an event called Moral Mondays. He was leading an event called Moral Mondays. Moral Mondays was an apolitical, it's not about being progressive, liberal, Democrat, or conservative, whatever, Republican. It's about making choices that are the moral, taking care of the weakest in our society. It's bringing together people who have perhaps been longtime Republicans, longtime Democrats, and saying, we'll work out the how a little bit later, but the why we have a civilized society is to offer opportunities to everybody. We need to have a society that can do that. And it's immoral for the richest country in the world to have people starving and freezing on the streets and being bankrupted by medical bills. So these moral issues of that immoral imperative, that sense of as so much people with so much wealth and power as a country, we need to be taking care of our weakest, is a fundamental aspect of the issues. So with that message, he created Moral Mondays, and Moral Mondays were civil disobedience protests at the state capitol of North Carolina. So as I said, he was president of North Carolina. That awareness of what was happening in the legislature and in the governor's office in North Carolina became his focus, and that was ground zero basically. And these protests occurred every Monday morning without fail, again and again, and eventually hundreds, over 900 people were arrested in protests of the policies that were being put through by that legislature and the governor, which were restricting voter rights, which were gerrymandering, which were not they were reducing unemployment benefits, and all sorts of the safety net that we put in our society in judgment of what makes right. And these are just a few of the examples. He's been out there supporting equal rights for everybody, LGBTQ, immigrants, across racial lines, all racial lines, again, as I already said, political lines, across all religious lines, in unchurched as well as the faithful, the whole range of people. And he's saying, I don't care who you are, as long as you understand the message that we're trying to bring, please join us, and our bodies, our presence, are going to force people to pay attention in this democracy and show them we're not asleep at the wheel. We know that they're doing wrong, and we're going to do everything we can to change it. So this is bringing it down into the state of Ohio. So in Ohio, the coordinating committee, as I mentioned, Mary Aguilera, Joan Van Beesler, Portia Bulger, Larry Bressler, Ruben Herrera, Cheryl John Cox, Dr. Reverend Susan Smith. These are some of the organizations that they're affiliated with that have been putting some of their time and resources and effort toward making sure that these messages get out, that we're really getting mobilized. Chairs there. And just as I started to say, we talk about poverty. Being poor is not a sin. Poverty is a sin. And why is it a sin? You can say, well, I'm going to feed the homeless, I'm going to take food to the homeless. But at some point you say, why are there so many homeless? And this is the question that Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King asked in 1967. Why are there 40 million poor people in America? And when you begin to ask that question, you're not talking just about what's wrong with this person or this situation. You're saying, we have a system here, and if you look at it closely, you see that it disadvantages so many, and it claims to offer a handout, but it doesn't in so many cases. And this economic system and this broader distribution of wealth has been concentrating for many years now here, creating that wealth at the very top and taking it from the poor, from the lower. So as Liz Theo Harris says, immigrants, Muslims, homeless people, and youth are under attack. The poor are facing severe cuts to basic social services. Millions are living without clean water and sanitation services. Did you all know that in Flint, Michigan, they're still drinking bottled water, and that GE has gotten, or is it GE or General Motors has gotten a separate water source so that they don't have to drink nasty water? But the people who are the poor people in that city are now suing the state because of the problems that have continued. Voting rights are being suppressed, and wars are being waged across the world and intensifying. It really is urgent that we build a poor people's campaign today. So the yes?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll question it back at the end. So the objectives of the Poor People's Campaign and National Call for Moral Revival is to change the narrative around poverty and the poor throughout the country, and to build the independent organization of the poor. So by changing the narrative around poverty and the poor, so much of our upbringing sort of says, well, you know, if you work hard, you won't be poor. And yet we see time and time again, if you work hard, and especially if you work hard and have a kind heart, that does not mean you will not be poor. If you have a kind heart and you care about others, this society does not seem to reward that at the moment. And to build the independent organization of the poor, you know, we're trying to we want to make sure that the voices, and as you saw in that video, the voices of people who are most impacted by these four enmeshed evils are heard, because we need to know their stories to understand the breadth of the situation. The most upcoming action of the Poor People's Campaign, besides this ongoing mobilization, will be 40 days of action and education in May through June, starting on the Monday after Mother's Day, May 14th. Massive civil disobedience in, I think it's going to up to 35 states now, and including Washington, D.C. And I already mentioned it's modeled after the I don't know if I mentioned, but the Moral Monday movement in North Carolina resulted in a court case that just recently the Supreme Court refused to overturn the gerrymandering by race and is illegal. They have to redistrict in the state of North Carolina. They were able to get a $15 minimum wage in North Carolina. Labor laws and organizing groups were able to make many changes in the state. All right, so framing and the principles of the Poor People Campaign. It's not a celebration or a commemoration of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King's Poor People's Campaign. This is a continuation. It's nonpartisan. It's not about left or right. It's about right or wrong. And the four enmeshed evils that, if you look at how these interplay with each other and how broadly spread they are, it's just staggering. Systemic racism, poverty, the war economy, ecological devastation. Each one of these overlaps and interweaves to make people, in many cases, subjected to, you know, an African American veteran may have all of these occurring in their lives in a profound way. Systemic racism, you see it in the schools, you see it in the poverty, the generational poverty that recurs. The war economy, oh, we don't have enough money for social services, but we have enough money for missiles to be blown across the world. And then ecological devastation, from the Flint water crisis, where you don't even have clean water, to the fracking, to the with fracking, where again they've exempted themselves from Clean Water Act, and then of course climate change, which is coming, and again people currently in our power are not paying attention to, and more than that, pretending it's not even happening. This is with the poor people. This is with the people impacted by these four enmeshed evils. It's not for, it's not a service to, it's with. It's solidarity, not charity. This is all of us working together to do what's right. It's based in the leadership, again, of those most directly impacted. You know, I'm going around giving the talks because at the moment I have the support from my husband, his working, to be able to do these types of talks. But I want, and I'm always looking for others to join with me and, or again, even replace me to do the leadership on the organization, because we need to make sure that all the voices of those, like I said, who've been disadvantaged are heard. This is building a mass movement of nonviolent civil disobedience as that catalyst for social change. 40 days is just a start. This is a multi-year effort. This is not something moving away. We got changes that need to happen in a big way. So in some circumstances, when we host this meeting, when we planned ahead, we like to have people who might speak to each of these, of the four enmeshed evils. Without that planning today, what I'd like to do is kind of, it's called popcorn. Basically, take a minute, think about these, think about each of these, and think about one or two, probably one issue that you've seen, that you're passionate about, and give me one or two sentences, just real quick, and just kind of, we're just going to kind of popcorn it. You know, somebody's going to speak, somebody else is going to speak. We'll just do that for a minute or two, just because it really helps sometimes to hear where everybody's heart is, because there's so many pieces that this touches for so many people.
Hello. I'll just pick one. War economy is, we've done lobbying about that, so it's so much waste. It's in the trillions of dollars of waste. It's not even taxable, you know, it's running our deficit up, which of course is going to affect how much money you have to spend for food or whatever. So the definitely is a huge problem, because more than half of our national spending, but there's, you know, trillions and trillions of dollars are just complete waste. In this, it's a systemic waste. It's, you know, it's basically a system. Yeah,
let's let somebody else speak too.
Lose-lose system.
Thanks. Thank you.
Have their hand up.
I live in a situation where there are 3 of us living in one household because the 3 of us could not live separate. I have a brother who is in the Army, and he's on a full mental disability from the Veterans Association, and he gets $700 a month to live. That would not allow him to have an apartment, a car, insurance, a phone, television, cable. I mean, he can have all of that if he lives with me and my brother. I mean, it's a nice household, don't get me wrong. I really love it. It's a really good thing, but it shouldn't be that way.
Speaking of waste, all waste, food waste, all sorts of waste are something we could focus on. And another thing, Cincinnati became the first city in the country to pass an environmental justice ordinance, and then wouldn't fund it. So nothing happened to it. It's on our books, but nothing happened to it.
Okay, thank you for an excellent presentation. You know what I learned, and you know, William Barber is not just a minister, he's a saint. But you know what I've learned though, which is very sad, and this means that we have to be very careful. All of the things that he's done in North Carolina have been reversed by the right wing. I learned about that in the book by Francis LaPay. They have negated everything that he's done in North Carolina except nothing. So we cannot rest. We have to work. And his work is fantastic. Organizations must get together. You can't do it alone.
All this makes me sick. I think we need a war on selfish rich people.
Amen to that.
I'm just going to get, did somebody want to speak on, we talked about, what about ecological devastation? I guess we mentioned that, and systemic racism. I mean, do you see what's happening in the schools, the kids? Yes. I was hearing on the radio today that, what is it, 99% of kids that have been handcuffed in the schools were entirely African American or Hispanic. That doesn't make sense. That's just nothing but bias.
Charter schools in Ohio are being marketed to the poorest, and it's a very racist situation around here. I've been involved in, personally and through other people I know. I've learned quite a bit about charter schools, and it's all African American students. Rarely do you see any, you may see Latino, a few Latino, but it's marketed toward weakening the public schools in the urban and the poor areas. And it's an attempt to privatize public education.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you all for, I know there were several things that didn't get mentioned out loud because I just know that that's why you're here, for every one of you, and I appreciate your being here, and I appreciate the voices that have spoken today. So next steps, things you can do. First of all, you can text the word moral, M-O-R-A-L, to 90975, and that it'll ask you to send your email and some identification so they can put you on the list here. Other thing you can do is you can fill out this form, which there's some copies, not quite as many as y'all are here, but copies on the tables. If we run out of these, we can check on the other tables. There's also, I have just sort of a table sheet that if you kind of look back and forth, you can figure out what you're supposed to do on this from the blanks that you were filling in on that. There's, if you go to, on Facebook, Ohio Poor People's Campaign, there's a Facebook page on that, and it'll have you more information about registering, as well as if you want to follow that page, it'll help you find out about what events are coming up around the state. Please spread the word. If you're part of another organization, and you'd like me or Mary or one of us to come speak at your organization, please let us know. We're trying to make sure that we reach as many people from as many different communities across the area. I'm actually traveling to Athens, Ohio. My son's at school at OU on Sunday next week because I want to give a talk there, and I know that I lived in Athens, like I said, for 7 years, and so I know there's a lot of people there who will care about issues like this too. Yeah, honestly, there are people everywhere, and whether they're rich or Republican or poor and Democrat, when we give people this opportunity to express what they've seen as wrong in our society, and to know that they're going to have an impact because there's so many people who share their concerns, it's going to make a big difference. If you want to learn more about the campaign and why it's needed, there's an audit of poverty in America, the Souls of Poor Folk, Auditing America, on the website that you can download. And let's see, any other pieces here. So thank you. If you're interested in leadership, please make sure you fill out one of these types of forms, and please make sure you introduce yourself to me after the talk, because I'd really like to, reproduce myself and get to a whole bunch of other places, including Kentucky and Indiana and other corners of around the state. Yeah.
I want to remind all of you, not so long ago, Lynn Marmer came here to speak about the Child Poverty Collaborative. And she brought up a lot of the same kinds of issues that the Urban League came out with a report about Cincinnati. Cincinnati is really a city of two cities, a city of the haves and the city of the have-nots. And they marked all kinds of things that are going on here in this city. And what those of us in the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition, we're dealing with this right now with the FC Cincinnati and tax abatements and all the things that are going on. People making a lot of money on the backs of
Poor people.
Poor people. Not even just poor people. I'm a homeowner, and when they don't pay their taxes, those taxes are pushed over onto me. So in other words, if a school levy says they're going to raise X number of mills, if these people aren't paying their taxes, and they're guaranteed 52 mills or whatever it is, the 52 mills has got to be spread among those people who actually are paying their taxes. So in other words, when they said in a house of $100,000, this is what your additional taxes would be. That's a lie, because you've got to pick up for all these people. And right now in Hamilton County, and that's the data we have right now, there's more than 25% of the properties that are tax abated. More than 25%. And we now know that those tax abated properties' value exceeds the non-tax abated properties. So that's how bad we are in Cincinnati. So when they're crying to you about not having money to do X, Y, and Z in Cincinnati, because they tax abated everything, you've given everybody to the upper 1% and created this poverty.
I just wanted to ask, specifically, do you have some ideas as to what will occur during 40 days of civil disobedience? What sort of civil disobedience are we talking about?
Well, I'm glad you asked that.
We have to go to jail.
You don't have to go to jail, but you could support people who are going to jail. But honestly, this is really worth the time. I think you're going to enjoy it. I'm willing to use my data to play it, so let's just go for it, all right? Because this is fabulous. Oh, I need to. Okay.
For us no fun. That's the day that people learn the damage we've done.
You can say along, that's all right.
Oh, moral Mondays, leveling the stern gaze, the whole world can change. Oh, moral Mondays, without you, no one would care. Don't trust that crowd. I say they may speak the truth, but why so loud? These moral Mondays are under the gun days for people like you. Oh, moral Mondays, we've overdone democracy.
Every other day.
Every other day, lobbies made to play, our jobs are clear. But when more money's gone, the lobbyists are all gone, they disappear, and much too near for Mondays. When will they end? I'm afraid that they may set a dangerous trend. When moral Mondays spend later to Sundays, I know where it leads. Soon politicians will be forced to tend to public needs. Every other day, money has to say, we know just who we serve. But with more money's hand, people start to demand what they deserve. I call that nerve. More Mondays is not like TGI Fridays. It's not a restaurant chain. The one place I can say I agree with you is one day of the week. Because I think that morality, like democracy, has to be carefully contained. Now, are all the days taken? Who would I talk to about registering unscrupulous Thursdays? What does it cost to get in? I mean, to get like a top spot, to be like up there on the stage, are we talking $10,000, $15,000, $20,000? Nothing. Well, see, that's your problem. You're never going to turn a profit that way. Do you plan to be a Christian? When it's convenient, at election time, certainly. Some chance to start arresting people around here. Here? Yeah. Seems like it might be more efficient.
Jesus got mad and really like physically throwing things over one time.
Now, Jesus is the good guy, right?
Everybody has a good living. Everybody.
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 That's a lot of people to worry about. I usually try to keep it a smaller group.
One.
Take 1 week off. Or a Monday. Make some time for golf. You know, it's gonna get kind of hot
there's a lot of going to be on these days. The new traffic regulations on Monday, totally unrelated to the demonstration, but all the one-way streets in the reverse and all the other ones have been blocked off. So it might be a little hard getting down there. Giant earthworms are a problem. They might burrow up at any moment. I'm not sure who lives in the basement. It's totally unrelated to the protests, but a lot of things to think about before you come down to the Legislative Assembly. We're always glad to see you, but just not quite so many of you. You're welcome, but not really. We're speaking the same language. I don't really know what you're talking about. You seem like a nice person, but it seems like you're a little clueless, quite frankly. Should we stop?
Get $1 million.
So that just personally I find tremendously. I love seeing the crowds. I love seeing the message. When I see that, it gives me a vision of a nonviolent, heartfelt, enthusiastic, diverse population of people who realize that, I need to do more than just vote. I need to be on the ground with my feet and my body. Everybody doesn't need to get arrested, but most of those people weren't arrested. Those people were showing support for the people who had chosen to be arrested, and there will be, legal advice to provide to the people who make those choices and kind of talk people through whether this is a good choice for them and their family, because sometimes that can have other effects. But if it's something you're enthusiastic about, and you've gotten your information and you want to do it, I've never been arrested, so I'm kind of curious as what it might be like. And frankly, I think that when you have that momentum and all these people, it doesn't have to be such an angry fight. It's just, we're not going away. You can't get rid of us until you start doing the right things and carry them through. And honestly, in many cases, new people get elected. Yeah.
So what exactly is being planned? Do you know?
I don't know the exact details. Okay. I encourage you to sign up, to join, get on the mailing list, get on the Facebook pages as specific plans come clear. I do know that we're probably going to need buses to Columbus, or transportation to Columbus. And so if anybody has connections with the folks that know the buses, or know way to get school buses, or know ways to get large scale transportation to Columbus, I'd really like to talk to you, because that's likely to come up by May. So we want to have a plan in place to make sure that our Cincinnati representatives show up and are counted.
Yeah, I think one of the disastrous consequences of the Cold War is that people are afraid to even talk about capitalism and what is capitalism. Capitalism, first and foremost, is people who have capital setting the rules for everybody else in the society, and in which the ultimate God is profit and no other consideration, certainly not community, in which it's the war of all against all, in which a small number of people start out with all the weapons. But again, I think we need to have more and more people engaging in raising that question, because usually what we hear is capitalism is the same as democracy, as free markets, and so forth and so on. So I would love to see people engaging in genuine analysis of what that term really means.
Alberta, where are we on time?
We're there.
I thought capitalism was where a lot of people get on buses and go to the state capitol.
I like that for him.
That's that kind of analytic approach that I'm on.
We have a hand here.
I just want to share my fortune with you that I just pulled out of the fortune cookie, because I thought it was apropos of today. The world will look a little better with some love given by you.
I just signed up, while we were waiting here, I signed up on your site. I dialed that, whatever that number was, and then typed in moral. And they have my email already.
And if you had any other questions, or if you wanted me to give another talk like this to your church or to another organization that you belong to, this is my contact information, and that's the Facebook page that Mary and I are working, that coordinates very closely with the Ohio Poor People's Campaign, but it's focused towards Cincinnati.
Let's hear it for Carole Womeldorf. Thank you. I'm going to go home singing Monday, Monday, even though it's Tuesday. Okay, thank you so much. That was really good. I love you guys. You do wonderful questions. Thank you, thank you.
If you fill this out, please turn it in, okay? Please turn it in
Turn
to
it
me,
in.
because that's what I need to get you on the books.
We have some great things coming up for you. Next week, The Impact of Tax Abatements by Michelle Dillingham. And if you haven't heard her speak, she is a very exciting speaker, so come and hear her speak. She's amazing. And then we have a candidate for the Ohio governor. Remember, there are 6 candidates, Democratic candidates for the Ohio governor, and you get to meet Schiavone, or Schiavone, whatever, on March 27th. In 3 weeks, it's the Hamilton County Commissioner, James Wolfe. And on April 10th, we have the Cordray Sutton campaign coming. I don't know if the actual Cordray is coming, but Sutton will certainly be here. So we're looking forward to that. We have great things coming for this luncheon. Please come back. We love you. We make sure we finish the food. We have to finish the food. Take your little boxes and make sure all of that rice and stuff gets home. Because it's good food and we want to make sure that it isn't wasted. Thank you for coming. You are a great group.